Good morning everyone and welcome to the show. Today's gonna be a fun one, and I know I say that a lot, but I really mean it this time. And even though we're working on an F-150, but it's old. And why is that cool? Well, because we're gonna put a double din in it. One of the things Metra's come out with recently is a double din kit for this older F-150. We got one in the bay. Why not? It's fun, right? You ready, Fernando?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get to it. So a while back, these kit manufacturers figured out that it's okay to cut the dash so that it'll never go back to factory ever again. And that's a big departure from the past. It was always, it had to go back to factory no matter what. So you'd have to build these giant dash panels and these overly elaborate kits. And well, that's just not happening as much anymore because they figured out that it's actually cheaper just to go buy the factory bezel and put that back in if you need to. Which means you don't have to build a $300 dash kit. They still do, but you don't have to, just a piece of plastic. With that in mind, Metra has delved into dash kits that are quite unique, and this is definitely one of them. So let's head over and take a look at it. First thing you'll notice about this F-150, it's a straight up single din. It's not anything else. There was no hope ever unless you pull this whole area off here, and I have seen guys that have done fiberglass, you know, big pieces to put a double din in here. So it's doable. It's just not realistic considering the age of the truck. Now, if someone's doing a full restoration crazy mod thing to it, well then it does make sense if you're doing a whole new interior. But if you're not, well, you get what I'm getting at. So the kit to make this happen is the 955701. Inside we have a new trim bezel for the front, set of brackets, panel clips, which are orange. And the reason why they're orange is so they're easy to see. That's one of the things that these manufacturers have figured out, that don't make these things black because we can't see them. And then of course the all-important instructions. Now I will tell you, any Metra kit, you can go onto their website and you can download these instructions. So if you're watching this and you're wondering if they have a kit for your car, and they do, and you'd like to know how it all goes together, you can download them, check them out, page through them, or just take your dash apart, you know, as a pre-thing that you might want to do. Usually on the cover there'll be the extra parts you're going to need, like wiring harnesses, antenna adapters, tools required, and then of course there'll always be a parts list so that you know you have the right amount of parts. In this case we have the front bezel, the two brackets, and then the two panel clips. The first step on the instructions is always remove the factory radio. And for this, because it's already out, I can't show you how that's done. However, there are a set of radio removal keys like this that are going to slide into the 4 holes on the front. Now behind those are little push clips that are going to have to do this. So when you slide these in, you kind of pull out like this, and then you slide the whole radio out ever so slowly. You have to be careful putting these in. You want to make sure you go in as straight as possible, because if you go in crooked or go in this way, you could get behind them. The truck is old, so someone may have had the radio out already and bent them. So slowly put these in, and then just kind of like do this, and you should be able to feel them push. You should feel a little tension when you're doing that, and then slide the whole unit out. Now once that's out, you can actually start with the actual dash disassembly, and for that we're going to hop into the vehicle and show you how that's done. When you're doing an install like this for the first time, it's always nice to just bring the instructions with you in the car so you don't have to keep walking back and forth to the bench. According to this, they want us to remove this wood piece here and this air conditioning trim. To do that, we're going to use our cool panel tool and just slowly work our way across. This guy here, definitely falling apart. It's got this sticky wood grain stuff on it, and we're gonna have to cut this, probably in our best interest, just to go ahead and remove as much of this as we can, because it is not going to cut well. And it's just a sticker anyways. So that gets us to the XLT. Now on the back side, the reason why we wanted to remove it as careful as possible, as you can see here, like this clip is broken, this clip is still intact, this one is intact, broken, these two are intact. So at least we have some, because I believe we're going to be cutting this right here, but we'll set that right here for now. Next, we want to go ahead and remove this, and as you can see right here, this one is already shattered. This one has a crack here. Don't use a drill to remove these if you can avoid it. We're using a T20 Torx. Again, come at it with your panel tool. There's 2 clips in the bottom, they'll pop right off, but as you can see, when we went to take these apart, just shattered. Looking at the instructions here, this shaded area, this is where we're gonna have to cut. They're also giving us a detailed of where we need to cut because it's not a straight cut. And we're gonna cut over here, so we're gonna come over, down, and we're gonna go around this. So it's gonna come straight out and over and down. And then we're gonna do the same thing on this side. What I like to do at this point is grab the kit and just put it on there and kind of get an idea of how it covers the area. The air conditioner isn't gonna move. We're just going to remove this centerpiece here. Alright, so doing a little test fitting, what we're seeing is that this kit actually rolls over the top of the dash. It doesn't get inside of here, which is nice because a lot of the times, as you can see, like they're all pillowed up and this isn't straight anymore and this is peeling down. It covers that. It goes up against the factory dash bezel here. And we want to make sure that we're on this side of this screw. So we'll take a Sharpie, draw on here the area we need to cut out. Now this side is going to be a little tricky because there's a screw for the dash that screws in from behind. Now they don't say to remove the air conditioner, but since we're going to be cutting pretty close to it, I think it makes sense just to go ahead and pull it out of the way. We just need to pull it out and bring it down a little bit. It's a wired connection in the back, so it's not going to come out all the way unless you go to the air conditioning ducts. There again, use the screwdriver because this plastic is super brittle. I can see where it's cracked behind here, and that'll be enough room so that we can get in there and do our cutting. So we have a lot of options as far as saws go. Normally we use like a buzz cut, panel, straight blade, one of those little flush cutters, but because we have to do multiple angles here, I think the air saw is probably going to be our best option to get all these little compound angles. I wouldn't use a roto zip only because it spins and you don't want it to walk into this dash pad even though you are going to be covering it. I don't like doing that. So this is the piece here. As you can see, we followed along this bottom edge here, brought it up around this flat area that was on the side to clear this clip, and then kind of came in at an angle. Not as much of an angle on this side, but kind of the same idea. We can go ahead and test fit to make sure we did all the right cutting we need. Now the orange clips we got, those are going to clip here and here on the bottom and allow this to snap into place here. It looks like we cleared enough so that this is in place. We still have to cut this, but we'll save that for a little later. Now what I'd like to do is go ahead and get the radio mounted into the brackets and see how that is going to go into this. So let's head back over to the bench. For this install, we're going to be using the Alpine ILX W650 short chassis radio, which should make installation a little bit easier. If you aren't familiar with what a short chassis radio is, this is a short chassis radio. Doubled in on the front, very short on the side. Most manufacturers have these available to you now. That's not to say you can't do a full double DIN depth with this because it's geared to do that, but it's always nice to have a little bit extra room behind the radio. On Metra, sometimes they use these V-cut dips. Whether that's needed or not, we're going to find out. Sometimes it is needed because the radios have to slide in, and if you use a normal fathead screw, it won't clip through. Sometimes they just do it because. Now there is a left and right side. On the dash panel, you'll notice there's this guy right here. That is going to clip into this. So it's going to slide in like that, and this is going to hold it in place. So for that, we want to just kind of get an idea of where that sits on the radio. Looking closely at the radio, I see this clip right here. That's telling me that more than likely these are going to have to be the flush angle back screws. We can kind of get an idea of where this needs to go, holding it just like this. Anytime you're screwing in radio brackets, always use a screwdriver. Don't go at these things with a drill. In typical Metra fashion, there is a little bit of give and take. As you can see, the kit slides up and down and you can see light. So we'll go ahead when we're ready to finalize it. We'll put some foam on the top and bottom to fill in any gap. They do that just to compensate for not every radio opening is a double DIN per se, I'm guessing. Let's take this in the car and test fit it. One problem I see right away is that where this is designed to screw in, it's these top two air conditioning screws here, and naturally those are the pieces of plastic that break when you go ahead and you unscrew the air conditioner. So if you remember how I said there's this screw right here in the corner, apparently, no, it doesn't say say anywhere on here. That needs to come out. It just shows an open hole there. Now this isn't gonna make our jobs any easier. What we have is a 7mm here. We're going to slowly take out of place. This fell out of this corner here that we have to screw into. This whole corner and this side, it's all starting to fall apart, which is kind of what I figured was going to happen once we got into this. We're going to need to figure out how to rebuild this back into place. This is what holds the radio into the dash. I think we're gonna have to do a little bit of plastic welding. Plastic welding, there's a couple different ways you can do it depending on what the problem is. On the passenger side, it's just starting to come apart here. For that, they make this screen. It's just metal screen that you'd use to screen a house, and it's designed to just put it over the top of it. So put a slight bend in it so that it wraps around this piece of plastic here. And then to melt it, this is just a straight iron. You get these at the cheap tool store for pretty cheap. Push this into place. You're just gonna set it over the screen like so. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna melt the screen into the plastic. As it's melting, you can kind of like slide it a little bit, and that will cause all the plastic to get nice and gooey inside of the screen, what you're going for. And then of course just sit there and let it cool for about 10 or 15 minutes. It'll harden back up, and that should fix this side. Now we went ahead and screened over the hole. When we're done, we can go back in and just widen the screen, so we can just push it apart and we'll be able to get our screw in there no problem. Now for this side, it's going to be a little bit more challenging because the pieces are all falling apart. On this side, we're going to be using the plastic stapler. So this is designed to put body panels back together that are plastic. How it works is it takes this little staple here and uses it as an element. And when you press this button, this is attached to a whole heating structure. It gets red hot and it allows you to put it across the two pieces that are broken and thus bring them back together. For this, we're going to start with the biggest chunk first and see if we can't get that locked back into place. Now once it's red hot, you just push it in, wobble it a little bit so that it melts in good and fills in the gap around it, and then it's all set and ready to go. Now it has these legs that go into the heating element, and when you're done, you cut those off. There's different size staples depending on what it is you're actually trying to fix. So in this case, we're doing really thin plastic and make a really thin staple. And we got one little tiny piece left that we want to try to get in here. And unfortunately, it fell and disappeared. But we can still join the upper and lower halves together with a staple, which is really all we need to do to hold this thing in place. So here's a close-up of this side right here. You can see that screen melted all into it. Poke a hole here so we can put our screw back in. On this side, we welded back in this top piece here, this bottom piece. That allowed this to go back in. Now it's firmly mounted. This was the piece that just disappeared, and we put a staple from here to here to hold it in place. The last thing we need to do with the staples is cut all these little heads off. For that, the kit actually comes with some flush trimmers. You kind of put your hand base because these things like to go flying. Now with that little hole that we have where we boss the piece, the iron will actually melt in raw plastic. Go ahead and add in a small piece. It just heats it up slowly, just kind of work it into that staple that we put in there. Be careful not to heat up the staple too much. Kind of like bubble gum, you just kind of pull and stretch it and fold it in on itself. And then you can shape it into whatever you need it to be. That staple, it's gonna wrap itself into that staple, and once it cools, it'll be one solid piece. Once everything is cool to the touch, we'll put the air conditioner control back into place and put the two bottom screws in. Let's test fit it in place now. If you're wondering what we're doing with this, the plastic clips have a tendency to bow out, so by putting our panel tool in there and pushing them back straight, we can make sure that they go in straight. I'm not going to put these orange clips on yet. We're just going to rely on these two guys up top here. And we're pretty close the first time. It looks like the bottom corners just need to go in a little bit. so that this pulls a little tighter here. This lip is sitting on this and it's preventing it from going flush into the bottom. Now when doing one of these kits, test fitting is something you're gonna do a lot of. In any kit where the radio is separate from the front trim bezel, so just be prepared. That is if you're concerned with making it look good. What we need to do is we need to turn this just a little bit clockwise so that the bottom of this sticks in just a minute. The top was fine, we just need to twist it a little. And that definitely looks a lot better. To get it off and on, putting it on from the driver's side first seems to be the easiest. Taking it off from the passenger side seems to work the best too. The last piece of the puzzle is this guy here. This needs to be cut. Mark it on, put a mark on it, and then we'll take it over and use the air saw and cut it real quick. When cutting this, make sure that you use this edge here as the line to cut it. Don't go all the way over to this line because then this won't snap into place. Gently, you can see what the finished product will look like. It's all snapped in. This is the overlap I was talking about, so it covers that top pillowing. You don't have to worry about that. It lines up nice and tight with this side of the dash. Pulls into the bottom. This gets covered. Everything is hidden what you remove. Now normally at this point we'd be going on to the next phase of the installation, which is the wiring harness. Unfortunately in this car, the factory wiring harness has been cut. We'll go ahead and go over that real quick in case yours isn't. This install would have used the 1770 harness. It would come with a black head here and a gray head here. The black head is going to have all the speaker wires on it. The gray head is going to have all your power connections. Standard colors on both. Yellow is constant 12 volts, red is accessory key, orange white is illumination, black is ground, blue would be amplified antenna, and blue white would be amplifier turn on. In this pickup truck it would not have these two wires, it would just have these. On the black harness it's going to have the 8 speaker wires divided into 2 pairs, solid and stripe. The stripe is negative. White is driver's front, gray is passenger front, green is driver's rear, and purple is passenger rear. These would simply click into place. Now there is a variation, kind of rare, where these would have had a factory amplifier and this harness would have been different. So before you buy the harness, go ahead and slide the radio out and make sure you see the 2 L-shaped plugs that are gray and black to match these 2 colors. We're ready for the final assembly. We have our orange clips. They simply just snap in place like that. Now we can take this over to the truck and get everything put in. As I said earlier, the plug on this one was cut. It still had the main gray harness in here. It was only held on by 1 wire, so we soldered it back together. Our speaker wire, unfortunately, was not that lucky. Now, we also did a CarPlay radio, so we were able to flush mount a USB here in the dash because he wanted to retain his cigarette lighter adapter. At this point, let's plug in the radio, the antenna. This is old enough to where it does not need an antenna adapter. The mic went up here by the rear view mirror. Looking at the space we have in the dash, definitely having a short chassis radio is going to make it a little bit easier to get all the wiring in. However, you would be okay if you had the deeper normal chassis. There is a metal bracket that attaches up here at the top of the dash and goes back that may get in the way and you may have to remove it. The last thing we want to do before we snap it all back in is turn it on and make sure it works. What's the weather like?
Here, and 86 degrees in Clearwater.
All right, once you're satisfied that everything is working the way you want, we're gonna snap this back on. Remember, start with the driver's side, work your way over to the passenger side, snap it into place on the bottom. And that's what the final product looks like in the dash. It fits nice and snug up against this. It's rather a nice fit. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, 100%.
All right, guys. Well, if you have one of these older F-150s and would like to put a double din in it, by all means, check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. There was a bunch of tools in this that you were like, man, I don't have those. Those would be neat to have. Make sure to head over to dnftooldrawer.com. That's our site where you can find links to all the tools we use when we do these installs. And we used a bunch of them in this one. But we're done. So, Fernando,
On to the next one, guys.
you guys have a great night as always. See you later next time.
Bye.